Right, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Conquering Podcast, and we've got something a little bit different for you here today, haven't we? A mini series,
a marketing mini series.
We've just come up with that name.
Well, we haven't quite come up with a name yet, but let's call it our mini marketing series.
Nice.
The 3 M's.
And we're probably going to put a few of these little mini series together, which are, and we've just decided this, or it was just came up with the idea, didn't we? Which might help business.
Technical phrase.
You know what I mean? Can anyone explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be about, we're obviously in recruitment, so a lot of it's going to be about attracting talent, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we're also at a stage where we're doing a lot of this ourselves, and we want to share. This is part of our journey. We're all about journeys on this podcast.
Yeah.
And we are learning.
We're learning, and we thought we'd share our learnings with you.
Mm-hmm. So today we've got myself, Jevon, Maddie and Tom on the Conquering Podcast. We are going to be talking about employee branding.
Say what?
So what are we doing today? We are going to be talking about a few different things, mainly around marketing and employer branding, and we could put a little bit of brand awareness in that, can we, as well?
Yeah.
Defined as a few different things. So, Maddie, who might want to listen to this podcast?
Well, I think this applies to anybody who has a business and wants to recruit the best talent for the roles that they've currently got vacant, or they're just looking for new team members to join their team / retain the people that they've already got. This episode is definitely for anybody that has a business, basically.
Yeah. So
I would say.
Put it very simply, people that are hoping to recruit in the short term, one-off hire. I think companies that are very serious about going through a phase of growth, multiple hires.
Yeah.
Or just hoping to grow in general. And then I would say companies, that may be struggling or feel like they're struggling to hold on to their best talent.
Yeah.
And their, staff turnover, retention's not all that great, and may want to do something about that. Change their perception in the market.
Yeah.
And build a better business. But I suppose ultimately it's all about growth, isn't it, really? Retention is sort of maintaining that growth, isn't it?
I think there's also anyone that's looking to save time and money in recruitment, because recruitment's expensive, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Either you're committing a lot of time to it, somebody's going through the process of attracting people to the business, reaching out to applicants, posting job adverts in the first place, or doing work on LinkedIn, or however you may recruit, or you're working with a recruiter, or you're posting adverts out online and just hoping and waiting for something to happen. So it's not just about growth, but it's almost about saving time and money as well.
Yeah,
definitely. Okay, so what are we going to do in this podcast? Well, Maddie, you are our marketing extraordinaire.
Wizard.
Love that
Would
title.
you like that one?
I like that one.
And you have been creating over the last 6-7 months, I suppose, different type of articles, which, how could you package it up? They are very much recruitment specific marketing.
They
articles.
are to add value to anybody that's reading them, but they were primarily created for our clients that just want that extra bit of advice, and for us to give our insight into the industry.
Yeah, so you've been trying to you've been putting these articles together, trying to add value rather than just us being able to send CVs, but also be able to build a company's brand awareness and what other things they can do to create a really strong, good business and help businesses grow. So you've done an amazing job with that. What we're going to do with this mini series is go through these articles, quite simply, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go through the nuts and bolts. You've put them together in a very simplistic manner where you can very quickly buzz through them, get a lot of value out of them, but we're going to go a little bit deeper, offer our opinions on those articles, talk about real life experiences about what we've done with that, and also how people can then apply these practices into their businesses when recruiting.
Preach it.
Happy with that?
Happy with that.
So we've gone through a few buzzwords. The first one is employer brand.
Bzz.
I think we'll probably all go around and try to define this one, because to be totally honest, I say these two words so often and I wouldn't be able to define it.
Really?
Because it's quite a difficult one, isn't it?
it is very difficult. It's quite broad, and I think that's why it's difficult. It can mean a lot of things, but for me, my definition is employer branding is the message that your business puts out about who you are and what makes you special, what makes you stand out from other businesses, your competitors. And the message really is what makes you special, what's different, and why should people want to come and work for you and stay working for you. And I think the purpose of employer branding, I don't know whether I'm going ahead a bit too much now with my definition, am I?
Keep going. You're on a roll.
The purpose of employer branding is to attract the best talent and to also retain, like we said earlier. I think like a really big stat that's in this article is 92% of employees would consider changing jobs with no salary increase if the company had a good reputation, and your employer brand has such a big impact on that. I just think that is a really astounding
So let's slow
stat.
it down a little bit. Branding
Yeah.
and employer branding.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between those two, we're very much talking about people and recruitment, aren't we, I think?
Yeah, and not to be confused with employee branding either,
Very
because
different.
that's something very different, and that's more within the company, the culture that you're building within your employees that you've already got.
Yeah.
Employer branding is how you as a business are showcasing that to everybody else.
To everybody else, okay. So what the business is putting out to potential hires.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tom, what's the Google definition of employer
Ooh.
branding?
Well, luckily I did some research.
we caught him cheating.
Out of interest, I thought, let's see what Google says.
Yeah.
So Google says, employer brand is branding and marketing the entirety of employment experience. It describes an employer's reputation as a place to work and their employee value proposition, something we might talk about another time, as opposed to the more general corporate brand reputation and value proposition to customers. So I guess you can look at it as you've got your company, corporate branding that goes out to the customers and the people that you're offering products or services to, and then the employer brand, which, like Maddie's described, speaks to the people that are your target market when it comes to attracting people to the business or the kind of people you want to work for you.
Yeah.
Quite hard to differentiate between the two, isn't it? But they are very two different things.
Yeah, and because they cross over so easily, because I personally, when I buy a product or use a service, I would also like to see the values that the company has with their employees. So that technically is their employer branding. So it is just so easy to cross over. But I think that is why it's so important and why it needs to be in your strategy.
Yeah, both are so, like you said, just to reiterate, both are so important, because you can be amazing at marketing your business to customers and make lots and lots of sales, but if you're losing staff left, right and centre and it's not a very nice place to be, you can't maintain those sales, can you?
No.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, you could be excellent at attracting talent but not make any sales, and what's the point in attracting talent? So they both do go hand in hand pretty nicely, don't they? Okay, do you just want to quickly read through the first couple of paragraphs of this article and then we'll sort of go through that together?
Yeah, absolutely. Reading voice on. So the title of this article is your employer brand up to the test? And this is a question everybody should be asking themselves. The importance of your employer brand cannot be underestimated, and managing it isn't just a one-stop shop. The truth is, it must be managed and influenced at all times. So the stat that I mentioned earlier really does speak for itself. 92% of employees would consider changing jobs with no salary increase if the opportunity was with a company that had an excellent reputation, according to Glassdoor. So what we did is we came up with 3 ways in which you can measure whether your employer brand is up to the test, and we'll talk through them now, I guess.
Yeah. So that's quite a hard-hitting stat, isn't it, I suppose? 92% of employees would consider changing jobs with no salary increase if the opportunity was with a company that had an excellent reputation.
It is hard hitting, but it makes loads of sense when you think about it, doesn't it?
Such
Yeah.
simple stuff.
Yeah, like, you know, if you worked at a business and a competing business down the road were doing the exact same thing, but it just looked like a much better place to work, people were valued, you know, you could see them enjoying spending their time together, and even if yours kind of did that as well, but that was marketed better or promoted better,
Yeah.
it would just make sense, wouldn't it? You
Yeah.
wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't worry about salary to an extent.
I think I find it so hard hitting. I don't know whether it's because I've, you know, only recently came into the recruitment world and have seen recruitment in so many different lights, as in traditionally when you look for a new job, I kind of always thought it's because people wanted more money, they wanted more benefits, but actually an employer's brand is so important, and it is, I don't know whether it has been more of a thing now that people look into because they care about a company's culture, and they care about, you know, you realise that you spend so much time at work and you want to be surrounded by good people at a good place and feel valued. I don't know, I just feel like maybe in more recent times it's been more important.
It's a quite hard hitting stat, because I think it demonstrates so much. It's just not all about the salary anymore, is it?
Yeah.
And there are so many things which go into employer brand that you can do for free,
Yeah.
you know? So again, like you said at the start, you can save time and money with this sort of thing. If you have a good culture, good employer brand, you know, yes, you want to be paying people competitive salaries, that sort of thing, but you know, you don't have to just rely on a salary
Anymore,
to keep people
yeah.
in. And let's be honest, if people are just money motivated, they're going to have no loyalty. They're going to, you know, go and find something else for the, you know, next sort of salary, aren't they, straight away. So yeah, it's a huge stat.
Yeah, it really is.
What's funny as well, though, it's so easy to think about employer brand, and you think about just showing a good time, if that makes sense. But I think what we've really noticed with some of like the surveys that we've done to people in the industry and some of the research that we've been doing is so many people actually look for purpose in work as well, don't they?
Yeah.
And again, that's hard to almost create and then promote as well, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it as what's like the company and individual's purpose within the business. So you've got, what do people want to achieve? You know, what challenges is a company trying to overcome? You know, what's the goal for the company and the people that are in it? And then what do you need to do to achieve that goal, almost like your behaviours? And then what sort of values and philosophies do you need to enact those behaviours? And then all of that almost makes up your company culture. And then it's almost speaking about that and promoting that to the wider world as well.
Yeah. We recently listened to a podcast, I think you got me onto it, Diary of a CEO, tag, about
Never heard of that one.
the owner, the CEO of Airbnb.
Exactly that.
And he was talking about exactly that, wasn't he? And Stephen Bartlett was asking him what he thought.
Steve, if you're mates with him.
Steve, I'm not quite there yet. Stephen, I'll call him. Was asking him his thoughts on that exact definition. And it was interesting
What definition?
that Tom just said.
All right. Go into it. Go on. What did he say? I haven't listened to it.
Well, it's talking about how Stephen thinks that he tries to define a company culture by reverse, what's it called? Engineering. So he thinks about like what you want at the end and everything that you need to do for the business to get to the end goal, and he reverses it, and at every step that's what the culture should be, if you know what I mean. That's what all of the people's values that work there should be.
It's because then everybody's aligned, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, everyone's aligned, everyone's working towards like a common
Customer,
goal.
employee, employer.
Yeah, and
exam,
everyone's
this,
going in the right
yeah.
direction, yeah. But what was interesting is the guy from Airbnb had a bit of a different approach or a different mindset, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was more of the opinion that a culture was formed through repetition of actions and behaviours to meet what their values are. So I think the example was, if one of your values is to be successful, then every piece of work that was done, he would check over and say, that's not good enough, that is good enough, that's not good enough. And he'd do it so much to the point that the team would know if the work was good enough without him even looking at it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that creates
The culture.
the culture.
Yeah. if you strive for excellence in your culture, then those were the like activities you should be carrying out, kind of thing, to get there.
So I guess the wider point here is that culture is part of the employer brand that you need to almost promote, isn't it? And get out
really
to
big part.
the people that are your target audience to come and work for the business.
Yeah.
These are big
We went off on a tangent there, but
yeah.
Well, it's big conversations, very thought-provoking, isn't it? And it might be another one for another podcast and another article which you put together,
Yeah.
isn't it, really? But okay, let's move on there. So you've Maddie, put together a few ways in which you can, improve your employer brand
Yeah.
and make sure it is up to the test. What's the first
Yeah.
one?
So one thing that I think we've been doing at Conquer to promote our employer brand is having a consistent identity online. So when you're talking about your brand online, like, do you know where your brand's being talked about, how it's being talked about, and the consistency of that really paints a picture of what your brand and employer brand is like. So for example, for us, a lot of the people, well, everybody in our team at Conquer, we're really pushing posting on social media platforms, primarily LinkedIn, to improve our own personal brand, to then widen it, improve Conquer's employer brand. And because I believe we're all posting in conjunction with the values that Conquer believes in, that's creating consistency, and it's also so easily recognizable for the people that work here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Yeah, so it's a very similar template that everybody is working towards.
Yeah.
Or, even down to a Canva post.
Yeah.
If you're getting into the real nuts and bolts of it, really similar templates, really similar sort of colour coordinations. I mean, colour's quite an easy one to talk about, isn't it, with a brand?
Yeah.
Because you kind of instantly recognise a lot of companies just through their colours.
Well, it's that is your identity, isn't it?
You
on
think
the
you
face
think of a
it.
few big ones like red and yellow. What company am I thinking of there? Go on, if you get this.
I'm thinking Savills. Is that really bad?
Mackie D's.
Mackie D's, there you go. Look. you were thinking a little bit too small there.
I
weren't you?
was, yeah. I wasn't thinking
But
McDonald's.
I mean, that just shows, doesn't it? Really, if you're consistent with your colouring, that didn't quite work with you. You're consistent with like your colouring and your messages that you're putting out to the wider audience, then that can create your brand for you just with colours.
But that then ties in, now we're almost talking more about corporate branding again, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that's where
It
the two
crosses
just...
over. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of similarities, isn't there? Because, I suppose if you're talking about employer branding, you want people you're potentially to work for you and still understand, your templates and colours, and I suppose it's just understanding the business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But going back to creating that consistent identity, I think it also builds your reputation through that as well, so amongst your future and your current employees. So the perception of what it's like to work at your company from the eyes of your employees, not just the directors that are spreading your values and your beliefs, I think that also builds a really, really strong reputation, which in turn impacts your employer brand. And again, like another big stat, Glassdoor put out that 86% of job seekers say they wouldn't consider working for a company with bad social standing. And I think social standing can go even further to talk about, how your employees are behaving online as well.
Mm-hmm.
That also, it all links up, doesn't it?
So how can you create a good social standing?
I think it comes from within the office, like just going back to Conquer again, I think we do in the office have a really honest and transparent relationship with everybody, and we're also supportive, and that I think is always transferred online as well. With what everybody puts out, we all comment on each other's posts, we all support everything that's put out, and that's what's creating a good social standing for us. Do you agree?
Yes, yeah, I'm just trying to think of, people listening to this that want to improve their employer branding. How can they create a good social standing? What else can they do? So you're talking about behaviours.
I think everybody needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yes.
the values and beliefs that you talk about within your company. Everybody needs to know exactly what they are, and everybody needs to be acting with them every day, being relevant and being honest, and just having like clear communication across like all of your channels, and knowing that that's what you kind of expect from your employees.
There's so many things, aren't there? Because, you know, you're talking very much about the perception of being supportive towards one another through like online socials, but then so much of that would also translate to actually the service that you offer.
Yeah.
And like, you know, doing a good job or supplying good products or whatever it may be, you know, that would improve social standing, wouldn't it? By being a good business and treating people right. And then giving back into like communities, and, you know, what might you do to support local communities or any charity work?
Yeah.
There's so many different things that would all boost social standing.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you basically said it then, but like the type of content that you put out as well, isn't it? You know, if you're posting a lot about what we do in the office, you know, all the social events that we go on to, the community side, like you say, you know, what does that say? They're sociable and care about the community. It's that simple, isn't it? I suppose, really, with the type of content that you put out.
Yeah.
And, you know, explain to everybody else.
What's interesting is we post so much from the office and in front of this green wall that people feel like they know it already.
Yeah.
You know, people come in and meet us and have an interview, and they're like, oh, I feel like I know my way around already, or like, oh, the infamous green wall.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's really basic. Fake plants. Fake plants. Okay. You got some quite nice questions on here, Maddie, which you haven't read out yet. But what makes your brand instantly recognisable? When your employees talk about your online brand, do you know where and how? So it's the where and how we haven't really spoken about. I suppose for us in terms of Conquer, a lot of where our, you know, where people would look at our brand is social media.
Yeah.
Online, LinkedIn, that's where a lot of people that want to work for us would probably be based.
Yeah.
But also social media in terms of the other more fluffy stuff, you know, your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Facebooks.
Yeah.
But that can be completely different for any other business.
Yeah.
Depending on what type of business they are.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, you know, do your research. We've done our research, and LinkedIn put out that over 75% of people actually look at companies' social media pages before they even apply for a job.
Yeah.
So for us, like, we work in recruitment, so why wouldn't we be posting all over our social medias and getting our clients to do the same if that's where majority of people are looking before they even consider applying?
Yeah.
So do your research, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's also the same for so many different sectors and businesses out there. Like, social media is so big now, and it's having such an influence and an impact on so many people. So I definitely give it a big focus.
Work out where people that could potentially work for you, where they are.
Where they are.
That's a huge part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for us, I think it's going to be LinkedIn,
Yeah.
isn't it? That's a huge one. And yes, the fluffier ones like TikTok and Instagram, but a lot of it is LinkedIn, especially experienced people that potentially want to be recruiters.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same for, I suppose, our clients that we typically work for as well, isn't it, really? Engineers, architects, people in the built environment. They're very likely going to be a little bit more active with following companies, potential employers on LinkedIn
Yeah.
than TikTok.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know, but yeah.
Okay. Did you want to carry on with that, or do you feel like it's good to move on to the next one here?
Yeah, should we move on to the next
Yeah.
one? So the next point is about internal alignment. So that's about the storytelling of your employer branding. And again, talking more about how your employees can have an impact on this much more than maybe the directors at the top or the people that are not as satisfied maybe with the services that you offer because unfortunately those are the loudest voices. So you've got to consciously decide what you want the culture of your organisation to be and take action on that. Ensure the culture becomes a genuine part of every corner of the business, and then that will reflect on what your employees are putting out there.
Yeah, so there's a line in here which I think is quite important to probably read. The last thing that you want is for your brand to be defined by others, as unfortunately the loudest voices are usually the least satisfied. So like you said at the start, you want your culture and your brand to be defined by the people within the business rather than outside of the business.
Yeah.
don't
And
you?
also, like with employer branding, it's the message that you put out about your business, why people should work for you, why you're different to other people. Only you will know what that is. And the more you can, take action and put it out there, the clearer that will be for anybody that would want to work with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree.
I
So-
think this is like the most important section, really.
Yeah.
This article, I think this is the most fundamental parts. I think that internal alignment, and because it's so easy for a company, for the leaders of a business, to maybe put stuff out and
To say this.
to
is
say
our
this is how we are, this is what we do. But if the whole organisation is all on the same, or putting out the same message, then it just gives it so much more credibility, doesn't it?
Yeah. Credibility. That's a good word.
And we talk about how the people in your business should act as the top of the marketing funnel, don't we, when it comes to recruitment?
Yeah.
All of your employees should make up the top of your marketing funnel to introduce their network, who, a large proportion are likely going to be your prospective employees,
Yeah.
to your business.
Yeah.
So they are the megaphone to shout about your employer brand.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And also, like with the marketing funnel, you want to touch all touch points. Said that a few too many times. You want to reach all touch points in order to get the exact audience that you want to be using your service or working for you. So you've got the right candidate that fits all of your values and all of your beliefs to either work for you, or in our case will come through us to find their next role.
I think it highlights the importance here on a slightly wider scale of actually understanding what your values and behaviours are within the business,
Yeah.
because you can not have those, and it's very hard to build a culture and a business and employer brand without having those values, isn't it? I think they can sometimes be subconsciously, understood by everybody. Great, but the more you talk about them, the more you can actually practice them as well, can't you? So, for instance, a few of our maybe more so internal values would be success, enjoyment, and experiences, wouldn't it? And if everybody's singing off that, hymn sheet, everybody feels like they are successful, and everybody is practicing success rather than average, then that's going to reflect to everybody else, isn't it? And if everybody understands that, experiences, again, if everybody's enjoying their experiences within Conquer, that's kind of what we want to portray to everybody that could potentially come and work for us. And that's the sort of stuff that you can actually put out on social media,
Yeah.
the enjoyment of these experiences that we want everybody to share within the business. But then you do think if you get even one person that's not sharing those values, that can quickly move to other people as well, can't it?
Yeah. Have a detrimental effect.
And
Definitely.
like you've mentioned in this line, which we sort of quite clearly read out, the loudest voices, the ones that are usually unhappy with those sort of things, that maybe aren't enjoying what they do, or maybe aren't enjoying those experiences, they're the ones that are going to speak as to as many people as they can, aren't they? So
Yeah.
they feel like they're understood.
Yeah.
So it trickles down.
Yeah.
Definitely trickles down. It's tricky with values as well. That I know that when we first set up Conquer, and we were talking about I think we actually had it on our first website, potentially, our values, and we just picked out 3 or 4 words that we thought they're good
They'll
words.
do.
They're good words.
Honesty.
But they're all just like should be's, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That you just should be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have integrity. All of those that quite often get chosen, they are
You
you
should
should
have
have them
that
by default.
standard.
Yeah.
They should just be your standards.
And we're going through a bit of a process at the moment, aren't we, where we're trying to work out our values,
Yeah.
which are a little bit more than just a word.
Yeah.
Trust,
Like they are
honesty, loyalty.
they are more philosophies, aren't they? Yeah, we
Yeah.
want philosophies to
Yeah.
live by,
Yeah.
and then everybody has the behaviours and values to sort of match up to that philosophy.
Yeah.
Like high performance is one of
Yeah.
our sort of philosophies, I suppose.
Yeah.
We don't want to come to work and just go through the motions,
No.
because
Yeah.
it's life's so short to come to work and go through the motions. And if we're here trying to build a vehicle for success, enjoyment and experiences, and the quicker we do that and the better that we do, the more success everyone will have, the more experiences we can all have together, and the more fun we can have doing it.
Yeah. An incredible bit of advice if people are worrying about their employer branding. I think it starts with your values, doesn't it? Work out what your values are and then trickle down from there on in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as the message that you can create internally and it'll be organically showcased out, like that is the perfect employer brand.
It's hard. I think about it slightly differently.
Do you? How do you think about it?
Well, I think about what is the goal. So like we were talking about with Stephen Bartlett, I think about it as, you know, using one of ours as an example. One of our goals or sort of missions as a company is to build a vehicle for success, enjoyment and experiences. So therefore, what behaviours do we need to enact to do that? Work hard, you know, turn up every day, count everything in, all these bits and pieces. Okay, so what values and philosophies do we have to achieve those? So actually working in it the other way around.
So you could start from a few different places here then, I guess is what we're saying. You could start from working out your values and trickling down from there, and then you can start at, I'm not sure how to define it, how you'd say, but you could start at what values need to be done for the service to be provided to, as best as it could be.
Yeah, what challenge are you trying to overcome?
Yeah. And I think the main bit of advice is to just start with it, and it's easier said than done. But
definitely start actually thinking about it
just,
as though, rather than just picking out honesty, integrity, and hard work.
Have the conversations within your businesses and talk about them openly.
We went through the process of having like a whole thought session together, didn't we?
Yeah.
Of, you know, what does everyone else think, rather than it just being the people that run the business making the decisions, actually making it a whole inclusive thing. So then it actually is the company's values as well.
Does a company's values start from the top, or is it rather than start from the bottom and work its way up?
God, that's such a tough question, isn't it?
That is a really
I reckon different companies have probably
done it differently.
Different types of businesses.
Yeah.
I think because our culture is organically so open and honest, that I don't think it wouldn't have been as natural if you guys came to us and said, right, here are our values, because that's just not how we work here. So I think, like you said, each different company will do it so differently because each company is unique to themselves.
Let's put out a poll. In fact, if you're listening to this, jump in the comments. Do you think your company culture started from the top and trickled down, or was it from the bottom up, through the team, through the whole organisation? Was it established that way? Would
like to hear people's thoughts on
this. Which way around was it?
I'll tell you what I think what happened for us. I think it started from the top, and then because of our open plan policy, let's say, open conversation policy, conversations started rising up from the bottom, and then there was a bit of a collaboration in between. Because I think we're very much of the opinion that, we us three aren't Concur, we're just the directors of Concur, myself, Tom and Kurt, but it is everybody's business, isn't it? That's the sort of mindset we have. So everybody should have an understanding and an idea of how the business is run, rather than it being, right, in you come, sit down there, this is what you're doing, if you don't do it, you're out. Because us three haven't got all the ideas, have we? That's for sure. So if everybody is collaborating, communicating, and bringing those ideas to the table, there is going to be a big element of trickle up. But I do think for a smaller business to start off with, there does have to be rules and behaviours put in place in order for more junior members of staff
expectations,
to understand what the business expects from you. That's how I think went for us.
I think you're probably right. I think that so many of the best ideas that we come up with, have come from people that work in the team, aren't they? We've got so many contributors when it comes to ideas about, process, how the business should be run, or maybe people that actually just want to know how the business is run as well, and actually have an interest in all of those kind of facets of a company and a recruitment business.
Yeah, and I think like I've just thought of it then, to be honest, but I think it's very applicable. I don't see myself as a director. I see myself as a facilitator, you know, of those ideas and of people being able to be successful in their role.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you could break it down and look at the definition of a director. You know, we don't sit down and direct people to do things, do we? We
No.
facilitate them being able to be the best person they could be.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of culture.
Yeah.
100%. Nice.
Very good. Should we move on to this last part of your excellent article?
Yes, we can. So the last point is about the impact on customer experience and, again, brand reputation. So just read a little line from it. A poor candidate's experience is likely to create a negative impression. And in this case, candidates talk, especially unhappy ones. Another big stat is that 85% of candidates say that a positive or negative experience can change their opinion of a company. So I think just with that alone, the impact that you have on...
It's all about experiences.
It's just all about
I
experience.
mean, obviously, if somebody has a positive experience, they're going to change
change
their
their
mind
mind.
and they're going to talk about it. And like we've just learned on the last article,
Yeah.
if somebody has a bad experience, they're going to talk about it even more.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think I've spoke about the customer experience here, but just talking about actually like the candidate's experience, somebody that might be coming to work for your company, the experience that they receive in that interview process is also integral to your employer brand and the impact it can have on it, because again, they can talk.
It's
as well.
almost like an interview is a little insight in terms of how the company's operated, isn't
Yeah.
it, really? And we've definitely seen that. And I think, you know, tried to practice that within, you know, our interview process, haven't we? It's very much a good time. You know, you learn an awful lot about each other. We do talk on for a long time. Sometimes they can hit the 3-hour mark, but it is really just understanding personalities and offering a little insight into how the business is run. Our interviews, for instance, you know, we're in a meeting room. You have to walk straight through the business basically to get to the meeting room, don't you? So it offers a great insight into what it's like on a day-to-day basis.
And part of what we've done is just such small things to make people feel welcome from like the very first second they step through the office door to potentially come for an interview for a role here. You know, we want everyone to say hello.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone here that's in the office, not, you know, have to get up and greet them, but it's just a, hey, good morning, a hi, actually look at the people, give them a smile. And then the same from the way out as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, everyone always says bye to the person that's been into an interview, even though you've not met them.
Yeah.
But that person leaves thinking,
Our
oh,
friendlies
yeah,
up.
what a
Yeah.
nice bunch of people.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully they do.
Hopefully
Yeah,
they do.
fingers crossed. it's such tiny little things as well, which makes
Such
such a
little
big
things.
difference. Like a water already available in the room. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody asks for a water, don't they? Offering a tea or a coffee, fine, there you go. We show everybody around the office, don't we? You know, yes, take them onto the sales floor. Everybody says hello, great, but you know, this is where everything is, and you know that's a big part of your culture as well. The office, the environment. You know, what sort of services you can offer somebody, like a coffee machine and bits and bobs like that. It does say a lot about how you look after your employees, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We always try to make an interview very much a two-way street as well. So, you know, a lot of people might go for an interview and it just be 21 questions, you know, getting bombarded with questions, and that's kind of, you know, you ask a few questions here and there and that's all that happens. But our process, we quite defined this quite early on, didn't we? As we would, you know, potentially ask somebody what they knew about us and, you know, get an understanding of their understanding. But then we'd go into like the whole backstory. So we'd spend 10 to 15 minutes just sort of telling them all about us before we'd even ask them any questions about their CV or gone for anything that they've done before. Just so straight away at the start of an interview, somebody just thinks,
Easy.
yeah, wow, I'm not on the back foot.
Yeah.
Answering loads of questions. I actually really know about this company, and they've taken the time to tell me more about them.
Yeah.
And I think so many people will go to an interview
Straight in.
and it'll be straight in questions about the CV, questions
Yeah.
about experience. Why do you think you're right for us? What can you bring for us? And it's all very one-sided.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back, you know, over the last year, there's one case in particular, you know, I've got a really good client who are a brilliant client, excellent business, look brilliant to work for, work with, brilliant employer branding, had an interview with a graduate, I think they were, and it was an absolute grilling, and they felt like a pretty confident person when I was speaking to them, came out of the interview and just absolutely hated it, didn't like the interview, thought people were like trying to catch her out almost, really strange questions, absolutely ripped into her presentation. But I know they're a great company to work for.
Yeah.
And, some people love that style of interview, some people don't. But if you want the best people, you can't be discriminating almost like that, can you? You've got to offer an exciting and a nice experience at interview stage, especially if it's a first interview, because it's that mini insight into how the business is run.
Yeah.
It's too full on. Like, that candidate would have gone away and
spoken about
they
it
would have
as
spoken
well.
about it to other people they met, and
and it's got that first interview has got to be pretty casual, I think, now, because people talk, obviously, but it's got to be fun. People are so, like, a big priority for people now, like we've just mentioned, isn't the salary, it's the culture, it's the environment. So you've got to put on a show. You've got to put on a show for them.
And I think how you value the person that you're interviewing is an exact insight into how you value your people as well. So having that, like, not relaxed approach in an interview, but more of like a open conversation, and a point where they don't feel like they're under the collar, like, straight away, and it's not pressure. Is that, I don't know if that's
under the cosh,
under the
hot under the collar.
That's the one.
Get that on the list.
We got there. Lovely job.
For God's sake.
Well, we know what you meant.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean.
If you're getting absolutely slated in an interview, it's 21 questions or 20 questions, whatever it is. I think you said 21. It's definitely 20. So you should have pulled you up on that.
Perfect.
It is hard, isn't it? Because you think, is every day going to be like this?
Yeah, exactly.
And the likelihood is, it probably is.
Yeah. It is an insight into how, you value your people and how your company's run. Another stat here I'm just looking at is that 78% of job seekers say the overall candidate experience they receive is an indicator of how a company values its people. So it's not just us three that think it.
No, it's not just us waffling on a podcast. This is real stuff.
This is hard-hitting facts.
Yeah. So it's not just an interview, though, is it? I suppose it's everything from the first application. Do you know what? It's everything from the application process.
Mm-hmm.
If an application process is really long and arduous in terms of, maybe you need to send a CV, send a cover letter, fill out an application form.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some companies might provide references from the start.
And then you actually haven't heard back.
And then you've done 4 or 5 things before you fully submit an application.
Yeah.
And then you don't hear back for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you get called for the first of 3 rounds of interviews. All of a sudden, it's painting a really...
And it's also feedback.
It's a lot of friction there, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So
and especially in like hard or skills shortage markets. If your interview process looks like that, and another person's interview process is, a first stage meeting like we've just discussed, or sending a CV, no need to send a cover letter about why you want to work for us and all these kind of bits and pieces. Send a CV, a nice first stage, maybe a second stage that's a bit more formal and a bit more sort of interviewee with actual, tougher questions. And then they get feedback within a couple of days and an offer's been made and contracts get sent out. That process says a lot again about the company there, doesn't it? So
I think it's a really fine balance between, and again, depends what type of business you're in, is actually understanding somebody's skills and understanding the person. If you go out and say to your market, we really, really value people, blah, 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 but then all you actually worry about in your interview process is the skills, well, you clearly don't practice what you preach, do you? But if culture has this big of an impact, and your employer brand has this big of an impact to potential employees coming to work for you, well, it should be all about people, shouldn't it? The interview, you can train skills. They have to have a certain level of competency, sure, which you should definitely put effort into actually finding out what people can do. But like I think the thing we're taking away from here is all about people, isn't it? For an interview.
Yeah.
We're looking at things from, an interview side of the table, but then, let's go to the other side, employees that have worked for you, people that might leave. they're obviously going to be talking an awful lot. 85% of candidates say that a negative or positive experience can change their opinion of a company. If an employee has a bad experience and leaves, they're obviously going to talk an awful lot as well. So you've got to look after your people if they're out the door, if they're within the business, because one person can have a huge impact on your employer brand.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, should we skip on slightly here then?
Well, this is actually the end of this article. They're the main 3 points that we spoke about in the article. So I suppose the ending is really just that we're having these conversations now. We're really trying to push them within Concur itself, and also to anybody out there that needs any assistance, to improve your employer brand, which in turn will improve your business.
Yeah. Going back to Concur Recruitment, our business, part of the podcast, we're very much at a point now where we feel like we know what we're doing in terms of sending CVs. I think we thought that a while ago, to be honest, but we're now moving into a part of our sort of transition where we are now offering an awful lot more to our clients through just this very simple advice. And it can be seen as very simple advice, I think, because to put these things into practice to start off with is very simple.
I think a lot of it's actually questions as well, isn't it? It's not necessarily just advice. It's actually, I think, like you said earlier, Maddie, being thought-provoking. Asking the questions that get people thinking about how to make improvements when it comes to attracting talent.
And it's getting them to understand how much of an impact these questions and thoughts can actually have on hiring and growing their business. Because not all businesses out there are doing these sort of things. And you've got to think, within a market within markets which is so difficult to find talent, to find people, what can be your USP? And like we said earlier, a salary isn't going to do it in the long run, because people will move for salary, but people have a lot more loyalty for a culture and for a good employer brand.
Yeah. Preach it.
Preach. Fab, lovely. Well, if anybody's got any questions in terms of employer branding, I know I certainly have after just having those conversations. It's gone even further, but please do get in touch. We'd love to understand your answers to our poll, where a culture starts from. We'll put a few different things in there, shall we? And it'd be interesting to know what people's thoughts are about how to create a culture. That's another pod in itself, isn't it?
Coming soon.
But thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Peace.